couple of videos now about coastal locations, but I've never made a video this long and with this much detail. The places I previously visited at the coast were very much in the south, but today we're in the north of England, which honestly can be quite culturally different. I've been to Yorkshire before, but this was a trip where I explored areas that we had previously overlooked, and spoilers I guess, but I had a great time. So here's my list of things you can try on the South Yorkshire coast. Our journey starts in Hull, which was the UK City of Culture back in 2017, which hurts to think about as that's 7 years ago now. But I have a feeling we'll all be pleasantly surprised by what it has to offer. Arguably the most exciting attraction in Hull is their award-winning museum known as the Deep. With a focus on conservation efforts over profits, the Deep is a wonderful exhibition showing marine life from across the world. I personally love fish. I find them mesmerising, and I think I could stand and watch them all day long. They have a really interesting variety of species here, many of which I've never seen before, such as these upside-down jellyfish, or these very unusual looking spotted garden seal. I mean, wow, just look at these things, they are so cute! The Deep has several floors of fish, and interestingly, they use the plural fishes in their signs, and after looking this up, it turns out fishes is actually the scientific term for multiple species of fish, whereas fish on its own is just used for the same species, or the singular of course. If you decide to come here, it's very important that you make sure you find out how tall you are compared to a penguin. I'm off the chart, but are you? Speaking of which, they have a lovely penguin colony, which is a struggle to film as it was very popular. I swear every local school has decided to do a trip today. There's a room at the end all about frogs, but they can be difficult to spot, so you may need to look at the tanks for quite a while. They also have cockroaches, which is a choice I would not make for my aquarium. But maybe they have some cockroach fanatics who love them? If you're peckish, they have a reasonably priced little cafe selling hot and cold food, and I had a nice ham and cheese ploughman sandwich, as well as some lemon curd drizzle sponge cake, and it was just what I wanted. Finally, there's their lovely shop full of so many plushies. I want all of them, but I need to hold back on my spending because I am broke. And on the way out, you are greeted by some turtle friends. There's a second thing I suggest you try in Hull itself, which is the Streetlight Museum. It's technically a transport museum, but it's really so much more. It has a recreated Victorian street and many vehicles, which you would expect from such a place, but it's a very immersive attraction to visit. First of all, they have the British icon, Postman Pat, which knocks the museum up several points in my mental rankings, obviously. As well as this very old vehicle for several passengers which you can go inside. If you do come here, it's important that you're careful when entering and walking around the museum, as you absolutely do not want to break something. If you're a fan of games, which, let's face it, everyone is in some capacity, they have an arcade room which you will need to bring some coins for to use, so bear that in mind. And they have this guy who is quite freaky looking, but my mum insisted that we gave him a try. I can't say I'm a vehicle nerd, if that's even what they call themselves, but I really loved looking at the Victorian street, which I briefly mentioned earlier. It has a wide variety of recreated shops you can look in, such as this sweet shop or this general convenience shop. It's interesting looking at the old packaging of brands that are still around today, such as this old shop window, where you can see Bird's Custard as well as Kellogg's Cornflakes, both of which surprisingly haven't changed that much over the years in their core branding. I know it's kind of hard to see any details from my footage here, but some of the most fascinating shops to visit in places like this is the chemist or pharmacy, as it tends to have some very strange and often quite concerning products for sale. I'm glad my medicine has moved on. Additionally, on their ground floor is this train, which looks like something from Thomas the Tank Engine. They also have a signal box which you can go in, but good luck knowing how to use all the levers. They have an assortment of Victorian people spread around, with my favourite being this pretty lady being led into her carriage. But they also have plenty of men looking after horses if you prefer looking at that. Finally, they have a section on bikes for those of you interested in a more eco-friendly form of transport. Ah, Bonneville. A quaint little town full of life and smiling people. Let's ask the locals what they think of the weather today. Oh wait, I forgot. This is actually fake. Bonneville is a model village packed with all kinds of interesting details and beautiful buildings. It's one of the most detailed model villages I've been to, and they have a fun worksheet to fill in where you can count all kinds of objects and do things like seeing if you can spot Spider-Man. This was arguably my favourite location on this trip, but I lost most of my footage, so thank my family for what you're seeing here, as I've compiled together whatever they happen to take. This model village is so incredibly detailed. You can really see why they added the quiz worksheet, as it forces you to focus on every little aspect so that you don't miss anything. I really do highly recommend coming here if you're nearby, as it's such a pretty attraction, and I feel like it would be very easy to miss it when looking through top places to go in the area. As you travel further around the coast, we reach my next suggestion of what you should do, which is Flamborough Head. Flamborough Head is an area of dramatic cliffs and coastline, and it's stunning to look at. When you first arrive here, the first thing you'll notice is this lighthouse. You can't go in it as far as I know, but there's plenty of space to take a fun photo. This area is quite open and you can look over the edge freely, but this means you need to be really careful as there's evidence of where land has previously moved into the sea, and I don't think any of us want to fall down from this high up. You need to especially keep this in mind when you're trying to spot seals. I did manage to see some myself, but they were so far down that the camera kind of struggled to capture it. Please be sure to read the signs to not disturb them. Once you reach the top of the cliffs, there's a very long stairway and path to take you down to a beach. And once again, be careful, especially if it's wet and windy. I don't want any of you guys coming here and getting hurt. It was quite amusing to see that for whatever reason, today was the day that 2 separate schools had decided to visit this beach for their geography trips. Obviously I don't have footage of this as I'm not filming some random kids. The beach lets you get up and close with the layers of rock found in the cliffs, as well as the sea and many rock pools. I managed to find a hermit crab myself, but maybe you'll find something else. Now we're moving on to our final section of the coast, a town named Scarborough. If you're like me and a trip to Japan is too expensive, then this next location might help to fulfill some of that desire to visit it. This is Peace Home Park. I can't say that the park is completely accurate to what a Japanese park looks like, but it was very heavily inspired by them. They have a beautiful lake with plenty of seating and places to get refreshments and toilets, where I did smack my head on the door frame as I walked in, but luckily all that caused was a very loud bang and not any pain, so don't worry. The highlight of the park is the lake, as you can hire a dragon pedalo to go around it, which is such a nice added touch, as I don't think I've ever seen a dragon one before. They're usually swans in these kind of places, but this place seems to understand its feeling well, I guess. So let's go take a ride. In the middle of the lake, they have this lovely Japanese-inspired building next to a waterfall, and I really wanted to go up close and have a look, but I filmed this back in June when some summer activities just hadn't quite opened yet. But even without getting up close to it, you can still enjoy the lake ride, assuming you have 2 very kind people like me to paddle you the whole way around the lake. Thank you! The water was mesmerising to look at, and the entire lake is packed full of geese, and more geese! You get to pass under this beautiful bridge, which, when open, is a route into the central island. They also have a stage in the lake for music performances in the lake when the park hosts events. I do think this would be quite the amazing location to perform at. The park also has extensive walking trails where we did in fact get lost, so maybe bring a map because it's not very well documented on Google Maps. But we found our way out, so hopefully you'll manage to escape as well. Along the trails you might find what I would consider to be the world's bravest squirrels. They'll happily get very close to you and they don't seem scared like most squirrels, so that was a pretty cool experience. Once you're finished at the park, you can pop over the road and come here to the Heritage Railway, which is actually Britain's biggest miniature railway, which I think is pretty cool. Depending on what time of year it is, you might get to try out the high ropes or boat activities. But this wasn't open for me, so I can't really tell you much about those. Earlier we saw Postman Pat, and now we have been graced once again because I found Thomas the Tank Engine! And while you wait for the train, why not have a very shaky ice cream like I did? I really like going on silly things like this train, and they're just fun, and they add a little something extra to locations like this. It's definitely a different way to see scenery. It takes you along the beach, and it saves you a whole lot of walking from the town centre if you're trying to go to the Sea Life Centre or the Adventure Gulf. Now, as you just saw, there is a Pirate Adventure Gulf right next to the Sea Life Centre. However, if you want more value for your money, I suggest walking a little further down to the beach to this non-Pirate Adventure Gulf instead. At the start of some of the holes they have a wheel to spin, which means you'll have to do a challenge such as hitting the ball with your eyes closed or hitting it with your hand. I think this makes the game more interesting, but it was also a bit stressful too while you wait to see how bad your doom shall be. Returning to the main area of Scarborough, I'd recommend you check out the seafront area. They have lots of lovely boats to look at, including some which you can pay to ride out on boat trips into the sea. I was particularly fond of this pirate-style ship. If you go to the front of the marina, there's a board showing an old painting from 1867 of the era right next to the actual view it depicts now. So it's interesting to see how little it's actually changed. They have a variety of gift shops and cafes for your spending money, and we tried out the Harbour Bar, which focuses on ice cream. I had a milkshake and it did not disappoint me. Like most seaside towns, they also have some amusements, which are basically just arcades if you'd like to try those out too. Finally, for some evening entertainment, why not go bowling? There's nothing particularly stand out about Scarborough, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't a good, smooth experience with no issues. And I recommend going if you're looking for something to do in an evening. If you've made it to the end of the video, let me know by commenting what you think of my brother's condiment henge.